Hi there, this is Jacob Nash Algebra Lessons, Unit 3, Lesson 11 on graphing quadratics. So, we know how to graph linear lines using y equals mx plus b. So, how do you do it for quadratics? Well, it's a little bit more complicated for this one. There's different forms, which we'll learn about on the next lesson, and how to change from one to another. But depending on what form you're in, you can use certain pieces of information to know how to graph it. So, this lesson and the next one collectively should be watched. So, if you watch this one, watch the next one. Maybe it'll make this one make more sense. So, we have a graph, and we know what a quadratic looks like. It looks like it's a parabola, and it can be as U or upside down U. And so, basically, you need to know, it's useful to know these things. Y-intercept, okay, what's wrong with that? We'll just say Y-int, X intercepts, which we already learned how to find those using factoring, quadratic formula, and completing the square. So I'll say Y-int, possibly ints, depending on what it is. And it's also useful to know the vertex. And sometimes it's also useful to know the scale factor, which we're not really going to talk about in this video, but basically whatever that is what A is. And if it's a number that is in between 0 and 1, so it's A, remember? So if it's in between 0 and 1, okay, then that means that it is a one that's going to be wider, like this. Ugh, dumb thing. And if it's one that is greater than 0, it can be less than 0. If it's less than 0, or greater than 1, then it's going to be more like thin one out, like that. So we'll talk more about that in transformations, because that's basically what it is. So let's just erase this for now. These are the three things we'll be looking at. So hopefully you know what a vertex is. That's just the point at which the two parts of the parabola come together, like right there if it was like that, or right here if it was like that. So how do we find these things? Well, to find the y-intercept, in certain forms it will be easier than others. So there's standard, factored, and vertex form. Standard is what we've been using in the last videos. Anything like this. So to spot it out, it will have something with a squared, something without a squared, and something without an x. That's what it looks like. And remember, we used this as A, B, and C. So the scale factor would be 2 that we just talked about, but we'll get to that in a different video. And this is C, which is always going to be the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is 0, 9. But sometimes you don't have this form. Like, you'll have a different one that doesn't look like this, that's vertex or factored. And in that case, what you have to do is plug in x for what it would be and a y-intercept. Anytime we have a y-intercept, x is 0, so we just plug in, I don't know why I just erased that, draw it right back again. Even if you didn't know that was the y-intercept, if you plug in for 0, you should get what it is. So let's plug in 0 where x is. 0 squared is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, 3 times 0 is 0, leaving us just with 9. So that makes sense. That it's easier just to know that that's what it is. But so let's just plot this right here, 9. That's going to be the y-intercept. So that's how we find that. How do you find the x-intercepts? Well, we already knew that we learned in the last lessons that you can use completing the square, we can use factoring, or we can use quadratic formula. I'll just do completing the square. So, once again, I erased that for no reason. So, remember, we first subtract c. So now we have this. Then 3 divided by 2 squared is... Oh, great. 1.5 squared. That's not as good, but whatever. We have 2.25. That's not as good. So, whatever. That's just what we have to do. So we add that to both sides. Negative 9 plus 2.25. Then you do, remember, x, take the sign of the second, or the b, which is plus. Square root of 2.25 is 1.5. Then you have over here negative 9 plus 2.25 is negative 6.75. And then you take the square root of both. And you have to stop here because we're doing a square root of a negative number, meaning there's no solutions. So no x-intercepts for this one. So that's all we know. No x-intercepts. And if the y-intercept is above the x-axis, then we at least know that it's going to look something like this. But it's not going to touch this line because that was negative. Now, vertex. How do you find the vertex? Well, in vertex form, as the name sounds, that you'll learn in the next lesson, it's already given to you. I'll show you how to spot that in the next video. But if you're in standard form, so remember there's 3 forms. If you're in standard form, you use the equation negative b divided by 2a to find the vertex x point. And then you plug in to the equation to find the y point. But for factored form, you can't spot it right away or do anything, so you really just have to convert to vertex or standard. But we'll get to that. So we have this equation again. We have negative b divided by 2a. So we plug in negative b, which is 3, divided by 2 times 2. Then you get negative 3/4. That is the x point for the vertex. So we at least know that it's going to be, the vertex is going to be, oh wait, I was about to do 3.4. That's not what it is. It's going to be very close to the y-axis. So the vertex isn't going to be there, obviously, but it's going to be somewhere on this line, which is called the axis of symmetry that we'll learn. So our axis of symmetry would be negative 3/4. Oh, what in the world? Negative 3/4. Wrong side. It's supposed to be over here. Okay, so the axis of symmetry would actually be right there. So how do you find the y point? You just plug in this into both x's. So 2 times negative 3/4 squared plus 3 times negative 3/4 plus 9. Messy. Okay, so let's put this in a calculator. 2 times squared plus 3. Not such a nice number. It's 7 point... Well, I'll do it in fraction form. 63 divided by 8. 63 eighths. That's not even easy to say. Okay. That's the reason why we got such terrible numbers, is because this won't happen on your problems, probably because what the answers are going to be are already thought out, but I just thought of something random. So our vertex is going to be negative 3/4, 63 eighths, which that's around 7.8, so it's like going to be right here. And so that means our vertex is right here. And we'll learn that since this number is positive, it's going to go up. It points at whatever direction. Positive usually means up, and negative means down. So since this is positive, you know it goes up. And it has to go through this the y-intercept. And you can see why when we try to find the x-intercepts, there weren't any, because it doesn't touch this. So that would be it for this video on how to graph quadratics. Thank you for watching, and that'll be it.